Turks, Jane Cougar, Anna Kasparian with you guys. Look, you know it's going to be a good show because, well, I mean, I was going to say we have crying billionaires, but in a sense they're jubilant billionaires.
Yeah, they're not crying. Today is not a day to celebrate their tears, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately, yes. And of course, what has sent them into screams of ecstasy is Joe Manchin. So we'll get to that in just a little bit. And Donald Trump now says, okay, cancel culture, A-okay. We'll get to that as well. It's an amazing show. So without further ado, the news with Anna Kasparian.
Maybe we should rename the show.
Iffy. Let's table that. We'll circle back to it, okay?
All right, fair enough.
Put a button on it.
Fair enough. All right, well, let's start with someone I can't stand, Senator Joe Manchin. Senator Joe Manchin is now citing inflation for why he wants to place a pause on Biden's Build Back Better agenda. Obviously, this is just an excuse. We have covered inflation in great detail on this show, especially because of the fact that it covers very specific sectors of the economy and is caused by supply chain issues related to the coronavirus pandemic and workers refusing to take jobs for low pay, all of that. Now, Manchin doesn't want to pass the Build Back Better agenda because it hurts his bottom line, it hurts the bottom line of his corporate donors, but nonetheless, he said the following, and he's getting a lot of help from corporate media. Let me be clear about that as well. And I want you to pay particular attention to the stenography taking place over at Axios with one of their worst reporters, Hans Nichols, who loves to do all sorts of positive PR for corporate Democrats. He writes, red hot inflation data validates the instinct of Senator Joe Manchin to punt President Biden's Build Back Better agenda until next year, potentially killing a quick deal on the $1.75 trillion package. People familiar with the matter tell Axios. Oh, really? People familiar with the matter tell Axios. Fascinating, fascinating. Who are those people who are familiar with the matter?
Yeah, so there's two things there. And then just to be slightly more accurate, what should have been right underneath that is this message paid for by all of our corporate advertisers who do not want that bill because it raises corporate taxes. So, by the way, it doesn't even raise corporate taxes, it just gives you a minimum tax of 15%. But God forbid those corporate advertisers should have to pay a nickel in taxes. Taxes is for you, not for the corporate advertisers of Axios. Keep it absolutely real, okay? And the second reason why he's kissing Manchin's ass by going, red hot inflation proves Manchin's so right. I'm an objective reporter, by the way, doing marketing for Joe Manchin.
Just stenography.
Right. The reason is because he's got a hot tip from Manchin's office. The insiders say it. Ooh, I'm a journalist, I got a hot tip. Manchin's press secretary gave me a press release and I wrote it like it was a breaking news event because that's what helps my career. And everybody else goes, hey, good job in the executive suite. They're like, oh, the advertisers love that one. Nice breaking news. Get out of here. Do your job, do your actual job.
I mean, he is doing his job. This is his job. This is what he's paid to do.
Yeah.
Look, we're gonna get into details about this story, but let me just get this out of the way because I have to, okay? I'm not interested in this pathetic little dance that Manchin and Biden and corporate Democrats are gonna engage in over who knows how many months, okay? We're not gonna get the Build Back Better agenda. Democrats who claim that they were in favor of the Build Back Better agenda have essentially given away any and all leverage they had by already voting for and passing the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which corporate America loves. They salivate over it. It's like Pavlov's dog. The second they think about the government handouts the corporations are gonna get as a result of that bipartisan infrastructure bill, like their mouths start salivating. They love it, okay? And Democrats failed in passing that before they got a concrete strategy in place to get the Build Back Better agenda passed. And so it is what it is. It's not gonna pass. The only way I see it passing is if it's stripped down so much that the only thing left is increasing the SALT cap so people can save more on their taxes in some of these blue states or these high tax states. And if all of the real social spending is taken out, that's the only way it passes. So in other words, obviously you're not gonna get paid family leave. You're probably not gonna get any help with childcare. It's all garbage. You're not gonna get anything. Because I don't want to play this game for another 3 months.
No, I want to play it.
I'm not
Let's play it, Anna.
For Manchin, it's not about inflation. This Axios article doesn't go into his conflicts of interest at all. The fact that he's making $500,000 a year off a coal company that he founded and is still heavily invested in.
No,
did Axios mention that? Not at all. So like we can keep playing this game. I'm not interested in it. They're not gonna pass the Build Back Better agenda. I think some progressives like Ro Khanna failed in just trusting Biden. Yeah, we'll see how Biden's gonna deliver for you in just a minute. But Cenk, why don't you take it away? Because you were right, I was right, and Democrats are failures.
All right, okay, it's a fair summary. All right, so look, Anna's telling you the conclusion of the game. Manchin here by saying that he's gonna delay it completely until next year is basically rubbing it in the face of progressives. You dupes. Of course we weren't gonna pass it. The House version that Pelosi promised you, and you trusted Biden. You think I would pass the House version? But to be fair to Manchin, he already said he wasn't gonna pass the House version. He said, I might and I might not. We told you on the show earlier. And then Jayapal said, well, I trust him, but wait a minute. He didn't say he was gonna do it. Well, Biden says he's gonna do it, and I trust Biden. Okay, well, this is accountability time. So it appears that Jayapal was wrong. Now Manchin is basically mocking people, mocking progressives, saying, you're suckers. Of course we're not gonna do the Build Back Better bill, right?
Let's go to graphic 3 here. With a limited number of legislative days left in the year, writes Axios, Manchin is content to focus on the issues that need to be addressed, Axios is told. They include funding the government, raising the debt ceiling, and passing the National Defense Authorization Act. So more military funding. Those are his priorities. So congratulations, Jayapal. You are an awful leader of the Progressive Caucus. And the Progressive Caucus, unfortunately, includes several progressives who aren't actual fighters for the working class in this country. They claim to be, but they fold immediately. And now you have corporate media, including CNN, repeating incessantly that, oh, look at Biden. Biden's finally taking inflation seriously. He wasn't taking it so seriously last month, but he's taking it seriously now. And it really calls into question whether he's gonna pass his agenda. He's not. No. Democrats are failures. Okay, and this is why we're seeing elections play out the way they are. The right wing offers something to their base. It's something awful. It's fear mongering, right? It's nonstop fear mongering about the others and fear mongering about critical race theory and all this culture war garbage. But they give their voters something. What do the Democrats have? All Democrats do is get baited into the culture wars because they haven't provided anything to their voters.
Okay, like I was saying, it's
failure.
It's accountability time. That's all right. Look, when you fail, there should be accountability. Otherwise, the whole caucus is saying, oh, that was a great job of failing. Let's do it again. So is it really failure by Jayapal and the so-called negotiators among progressives? Well, guys, Manchin just said it's going to next year. I'm not even considering it. They say, well, no, hold on. They say, well, look, maybe I'm gonna do a couple of months next year. Is that a big deal? No, then he adds on just to rub it in further. Oh, no, I'm gonna put it behind 3 other bills. In other words, we're not gonna get to it. I was actually too generous. Anna's skepticism in the earlier predictions so far appears to be more correct.
Absolutely.
I thought that there was a bigger chance that they were gonna take BBB and they were gonna strip it down and take out anything that corporations don't approve of. It wasn't gonna be paid for by any corporate tax increases or anything along those lines, but they were gonna keep things like universal pre-K that corporations actually do want, right? So whatever was corporate approved, they were gonna pass as a trash bill and then do marketing. Oh my God, another celebration, historic, etc. And I thought it was a lower chance that they would just go, no. We just dismiss you. Of course we weren't gonna pass anything, you fools. That says I'm not even gonna do marketing for you. I'm not even gonna let you pretend that you had a win. I'm gonna slap you right across the face. And as
do they like it?
Yeah, as Kurt Russell once famously asked Billy Bob Thornton, are you gonna sit there and bleed all day? Or are you gonna do something about it?
No,
and the answer for progressives is no. But look, now accountability on the other side, okay? There were 6 Justice Democrats who voted no on this BIF bill, on the bill that Manchin wanted. Why? They said, we don't want to give away our leverage. If we give away our leverage, we're not gonna get Build Back Better. Well, they were 100% right. So has the mainstream media come out and said, oh, our bad? No, it turns out AOC, Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, they're actually the smartest politicians in all of Washington. They knew that they would be giving away leverage and then Manchin would kill Build Back Better. That's exactly what happened. No, they're gonna keep writing the articles as if they voted against infrastructure because they wanted less for their voters, when it's the exact opposite, they wanted more for their voters. But yet, the corporate media, the mask is off. Like they right now, when this whole propaganda about inflation, like the minute they got the corporate backed bill passed and they don't want any other spending that goes to the voters passed, inflation, oh my God, the debt, the deficit, oh my God, inflation, debt. They passed $2 trillion worth of tax cuts for the rich under Trump. Nobody talked about inflation. Nobody talked about, okay, you say, okay, forget inflation because, hey, the numbers are slightly different. How about the debt, the deficit? No one, zero. None of the anchors talked about it. None of the Axios writers talked about it. Now it's, oh, a voter might get something. No, the progressives are wrong. How could they not back the corporate-backed bill? Corporations are awesome. They want something for their voters. They're evil. Right, get out of here, man. So the whole game is nonsense. Honestly, almost everybody in Washington, except those 6, are corrupt. If you're in the progressive caucus and you didn't vote no, are you really progressive? So yeah, that's a little dispiriting that the progressive caucus is a joke. But they could begin to repair the damage by getting new leadership. Of course, Jayapal shouldn't be the leader anymore. That fail was so thorough and so quick, it's mind-boggling. I mean, that's Manchin, like I said, it was an open-handed slap. And likely, other than the 6 core Justice Democrats, the rest of the progressives will now meekly do marketing for their corporate Democratic opponents, if they really are opponents.
Oh, it's so like.
And now they will say, oh no, Cenk and Anna are being unfair. We didn't really need Build Back Better. The corporate Democrats are right. The infrastructure bill is good enough. It's good enough. I mean, almost every dollar goes to corporate America, but it builds bridges and roads and it's good enough. That's the saddest part. That's the saddest part. When then they turn around and make the progressive so-called leaders do marketing for the bills, pared down bills that they passed, full well knowing they lost on all of their progressive priorities. Where is it? Where show me paid family leave, show me lower drug prices. You did not deliver. That's a fact, no matter how uncomfortable it makes you.
I mean, we can't even get the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour.
Zero wins,
and by the way, I mean, Bernie was campaigning on that in 2016. Hey, wakey, it's 2021.
You lost.
The numbers should actually be higher at this point.
You lost.
They lost. No, they did lose. So anyway, look, let's just get to your videos, okay? Because like I'm done with this story. I'm done with the Democrats. I'm just done, absolutely done. They don't deliver. All they do is this ridiculous posturing about how like, oh, we're so much better than Republicans because look at us, we actually care about the disanfranchised. And they never deliver. They never do it. So go ahead.
So I just look, guys, the reason we're gonna show you the videos is because, right, the Jayapals of the world will now pretend to be surprised. Like, Joe Manchin says he's not gonna vote for the bill until we pass like 28 other bills? I'm so surprised. So I'm gonna show us telling you that that was gonna happen before it happened. This is before they voted, watch. Manchin, on the other hand, says, I do not promise it. He was very clear in his press conference. He said, it is equally likely that I will vote no. So later, when Jayapal, as you're gonna see now, she's like, oh, I trust and love these people. My God, they would never, a politician lying, a corporate politician lying, it would never happen, my beloved Democratic colleagues, right? Well, later, Manchin will say, I didn't lie. I told you before you surrendered that I wasn't gonna necessarily vote for your bill. So don't pretend it's a surprise to you now. That was November 2nd, that was 9 days ago, that was before your vote. And then we even told you that Manchin was going to make an excuse like fill in the blank. In this case, it happened to be inflation. Watch us tell you what's gonna happen before it happened because it's really easy to predict. I'm telling you right now, the minute they pass the infrastructure bill, that's the corporate backed bill, they lose all leverage instantly. They have literally zero leverage. I wish it weren't the case, but that's the case. And so what is Manchin gonna do? What any sensible negotiator would do. I changed my mind. In fact, I didn't even change my mind. I told you ahead of time that I was equally likely to vote no. And you were an idiot and surrendered to me anyway. And and I explained in that video, hey, he'll come up with an excuse of X, Y, Z. It doesn't matter what the excuse is. And so in this case, the convenient excuse was inflation.
No, and it's actually a little sicker, right? Because while Manchin is citing inflation, as we've commented on several times, inflation is limited to very specific sectors of the economy that are impacted by either supply chain issues, or in the case of gas, right? There is an increase of prices per gallon for gasoline at the pump. We're talking about our oil dependency, right? We're still oil dependent. And the Build Back Better agenda is supposed to focus on getting us, pivoting the country to renewable energy. And by the way, why are we experiencing higher gas prices right now? Is it because Joe Biden is like creepily sitting in the White House like, how can I make gas prices higher? No, because gas prices are manipulated by OPEC. Oil producing countries that are part of OPEC, this cartel, they make decisions about the production of oil, and they, on purpose, hold back the production of oil in order to see a spike in prices. And that's what they're doing right now, because they wanna make the money that they lost from the beginning of the pandemic, when the demand for gasoline at the pump was at an all-time low because people were staying home. So we're like basically vulnerable to this manipulation, this endless manipulation, because we're still dependent on fossil fuels. And Manchin, who's now claiming that inflation is the problem here, right? He's worried about inflation. That's why he can't pass the Build Back Better agenda, is who's keeping us dependent on fossil fuels, when this bill is exactly what was supposed to get us off of that dependency.
Oh, that's a great irony. And honestly, I hadn't even thought about that last piece of the irony.
What can I say?
Okay, so last things, guys, here. Don't give up all hope. Remember, we were worried that nobody was gonna vote no, but the 6 Just Democrats held strong. And by the way, they got massive nuclear blowback. The corporate media yelled at them at the top of their lungs. Every article smeared them, every single article. And they got tons of constituent calls, because the New York Times and everybody else is a bunch of liars. When they're like, oh yeah, progressives wanted less for their voters. Hey, the voters, they screwed you over. I mean, it's trash, pure trash, right? Yep. So they withstood that nuclear blast to do the right thing, the principled thing. So it turns out you can elect uncorrupted, clean progressives who actually fight for you. Okay, now the last thing is Joe Biden. Look, Joe Biden's a joke. He never meant any of those progressive provisions. We told you he didn't mean it. We told you that it was all a joke and that him and Manchin were gonna have a good laugh over it later. And the corporate press said, no, Joe, and Jayapal and Pelosi, oh, Joe Biden is very tough and he knows how to negotiate, and he's got a, Ro Khanna told us on this show that Biden has a secret deal with Manchin. Really? Where's the secret deal? Or they do have a secret deal, and the secret deal was to screw over progressives and have a belly laugh over it. There's only one promise that Biden is going to keep, and it's to his donors. Nothing will fundamentally change.
When we come back, a satanic looking man, Ken Langone, gives props to the very precious and special Senator Joe Manchin. We've got that story and more when we return.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years, believing that it was actual berries.
Yeah, she's like, these aren't real berries at all.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got news for you, Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Idarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There's only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I've seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you wanna know how we're gonna win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army, Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
All right, back on TYT. Jake and Anna with you guys. Go.
Billionaire Ken Langone is giving props to Senator Joe Manchin, who has been a massive obstacle in passing any type of social spending to better your life. Now, billionaires don't want to pay more in taxes, which is why Ken Langone is super happy with everything that Manchin's been doing lately. Let's watch.
This inflation is a lot worse than people think. It is not transitory, and trust me, the little people like my parents and Lowry's parents, they're going to suffer because it's inflation is a regressive tax. Thank God for Joe Manchin, by the way. Thank God for Joe Manchin. The guy's got guts and courage, and he did what he had to do, and he'll continue to do what he has to do. I'm going to have one of the biggest fundraisers. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. I'm going to have one of the biggest fundraisers I've ever had for him. He's special, he's precious, he's a great American.
You heard it here, folks. Ken Langone, a billionaire, believes that Democrat Joe Manchin is special and precious. And by the way, as a billionaire, I don't know if I would refer to my parents as the little guys, unless Ken Langone is just letting his elderly parents fend for themselves as he's, swimming in billions of dollars. But who knows?
Anna, the same thing occurred to me because it's a small point in an amazing clip there that perfectly demonstrates American politics. But it was kind of funny, like my inflation is gonna kill my poor parents. Jesus, dude, you have billions of dollars. Are you seriously saying you didn't provide for your parents?
Bootstraps, Mom.
Okay, then you actually are the Sith Lord that you appear to be, right? So stop it. You're such an obvious liar, right? Either you're the worst person in the world, which is possible,
sure.
All right? Or you're the most obvious liar in the world. Pick one. Now, the part where he's overwhelmingly telling and obviously telling the truth is a part where he's like, "Oh, Joe Manchin." I just can't quit you. Okay, I mean, he talks about how precious he is and how he looks into his eyes, and presumably there's stars and hearts everywhere, and he's in love with them. Now, that's a Republican. That's a Republican donor saying, my God, this is a Democrat I love. Why? Because he's doing the Republican agenda. He's doing the Republican agenda better than any Republican could. So now, though, the best part, where it's so brazen, there's no brakes in the car anymore because no one's holding them accountable. So a billionaire says on national television, I'm going to bribe the politician who made sure that my taxes would not be increased. That saved Ken Langone hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. So he says, in return, I will bribe him later. I'll put together a spectacular fundraiser where we will all bring in our legalized bribes. Thank you to the Supreme Court for making these bribes legal. Just because they're legal doesn't mean they're not bribes. When Ken Langone says, thank you for saving me all this money, you crooked, corrupt politician, I will announce on air that I will then give you a tiny, 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 tiny percentage of that for you being my bitch, my servant. Manchin does such a good job of cleaning my floors with his tongue. Then he finally gets to my boots. Bravo, precious Manchin.
Special.
And then, does anybody challenge him on TV? They're like, oh, okay, good point. All right, bribes for Manchin from the billionaire. And nobody even notes it. They don't even note it.
No,
they're like, yeah, okay, that makes sense.
CNBC is actually pretty incredible in how transparent they are.
Yeah.
Like this is just one example. On any given day, if you're watching CNBC, it's like, just see how we screwed over the American people? How awesome was that? Like, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the message that you get over and over and over again. I mean, they have a host who didn't know the difference between Ireland and Scotland. I'm not even kidding. I'm not kidding.
He didn't know that Ireland was not in the UK. But it doesn't matter. They don't have to know the news because they're not news anchors, they're news actors. So, I mean, and it's not just CNBC, MSNBC, the liberal channel in Washington. What a joke. Stephanie Rule today talking about higher wages is bad. Bad, it's inflation. Oh, I can't believe the workers are actually getting something, right? And this is corporate media where they celebrate the corruption that is Washington. So, and last thing, right wingers, you're celebrating like, yes, corporations what? Wait, what? Guys, they're trying to make your wages lower. They're not trying to make your wages higher. What are you celebrating? You hate corrupt Democrats? Well, here's a corrupt Democrat, and here's a billionaire saying, yeah, I bought him, and I'm gonna bribe him more so that I get the money and you fools don't. You idiot average voters, we're laughing at you on national TV. So why would you celebrate that? As progressives, we hate that, and we call out our own, which is, by the way, the majority of the Democratic Party. They're corrupt. So are you ever gonna do the same and go, why the hell are they giving all the breaks to the richest people in the country, to the corporations that are screwing you and making sure you don't get high wages? You should also be incredibly mad, and not just big government, but the big business that bought big government.
All right, let's switch gears to a former Democratic Congresswoman who is now making her rounds among the right-wing media, and that's Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard has weighed in on Kyle Rittenhouse's trial. And while it's very unlikely that he will be convicted of the homicide charges against him due to his defense of using self-defense in the shootings in Kenosha, Wisconsin, what I'm also noticing is that people like Tulsi Gabbard are trying to use his unlikeliness of getting convicted as something to clear his record of any wrongdoing, of any type of bad behavior altogether. And so there's the criminal trial, right? And then there's also Kyle Rittenhouse as a person. And he is not on dealing with charges based on his association with white supremacists or who he is as a person. In this country, you can legally be a white supremacist, unfortunately, right? And so she says this, and I think it's fascinating. Pay close attention to the wording too. With no evidence, mainstream media and Antifa-loving politicians,
oh, come on,
immediately labeled Rittenhouse a white supremacist terrorist. It's obvious now that he was just a foolish kid who felt he needed to protect people and the community from rioters and arsonists because the government failed to do so. Now, I will agree with one thing. It's very clear that both Rittenhouse and members of militia groups that showed up during the protests in Kenosha, Wisconsin, did not believe that law enforcement would be able to handle the job or to do the job appropriately, which is why they showed up armed to carry out vigilante justice. That's why they were there, okay? Now, to say that there's no evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse is a white supremacist or has ties to white supremacists, I think is a little bit ridiculous. And I wanna provide the evidence for that, okay? So first off, prior to the shootings happening in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year, he was posting on social media, as most people do, and his posts are relevant, especially when you consider the climate in the country at the time and when you consider the number of police shootings that were taking place that led to the deaths of unarmed African Americans. Now, the public posts on Rittenhouse's Facebook are almost entirely dedicated to honoring police with Blue Lives Matter graphics, which of course is a response to Black Lives Matter, photos of officers killed in the line of duty, and the thin blue line flag associated with support for law enforcement. Now look, why is that relevant? Because when you think about cases like Philando Castile, who had a license to carry and told the cop during a routine traffic stop, hey, I have a licensed gun in the glove compartment, he was shot and killed immediately, no questions asked. Why did that happen? When you see cases like Tamir Rice, a 12-year-old who was playing with a toy gun at a park, he was shot by a cop and killed within 2 seconds of the cop showing up. Cop didn't even get out of his car. Showed up, boom, 12-year-old gone, dead. To see those videos of innocent Black people getting shot and killed and respond to Black Lives Matter with Blue Lives Matter, it sends a message. But I'm not done yet. Rittenhouse attended a Trump rally in Des Moines, sitting in the front row and posting a TikTok video from the January 30th event. BuzzFeed News reported at the time. The video, which has since been deleted, appeared to match C-SPAN footage of Rittenhouse standing just to the left of the lectern. And look, we know what those Trump rallies were like. We know what was appealing about Donald Trump among the right-wing electorate. So do with that information what you will. But there's one other thing I wanna note in response to Tulsi Gabbard saying, with no evidence. There was security footage obtained from a Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin bar. This is after Rittenhouse had been bailed out of prison. And he was there with Proud Boys members. And there he is, here's a screenshot of the security footage showing him making that hand gesture that white supremacists tend to make. The video taken 2 weeks before, and then there's other stuff which I'll get to in just a second. Let's take that down because I want to give more context before we get to that graphic. But yes, this graphic of him making that hand gesture, like we all know what that is. We know that right wingers and white supremacists use it to make a point. And so like to say there's no evidence, I think is ridiculous. Now, anyway, you go ahead, Cenk.
So look, Rittenhouse, like all the militia members there, went there because they couldn't wait to shoot people. You have no business being vigilante as going and saying, oh, well, Blue Lives Matter, I support the cops completely, but they're complete losers who can't do the job. So I'm gonna have to step in and do their job for them because they're incompetent, right? Wait, which one is it? Oh, you only like cops when they're shooting Black people. I get it, right? And then all of a sudden, he tried to surrender to the cops. They wouldn't even take it. They're like, oh, you're a white killer, a right winger? Oh, go on back home. Who cares? Free to go. Anyways, you guys know all that. That's not the interesting part of the story. The interesting part of the story is that Tulsi Gabbard is doing very standard right-wing talking points, right?
And propaganda, yeah.
Antifa-loving politicians? Wait, that's a reference to the most progressive members of Congress. Just a little while ago, she was pretending to be one of the most progressive members of Congress. She ran where in the beginning she was saying that she was kind of mainly to the left of Bernie Sanders. And she would often vote with the squad, etc. Now all of a sudden, here comes a paycheck and Tulsi Gabbard's like, Antifa-loving politicians, can you believe the left? And the Democrats, what they're doing with race is atrocious.
Well, I mean, look, it's interesting because she's accusing people of smearing Rittenhouse as a white supremacist. And in that same argument, she's smearing politicians as Antifa loving. So let's get specific. Which politicians exactly are Antifa loving, and what evidence do you have that they love Antifa or have defended Antifa? And I'm curious, right? Because look, we've covered a lot of the trial, the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I've very clearly stated that based on the evidence that we've seen, the self-defense argument seems sound. Right? We'll see how the trial plays out, but that's the way it's looking. It is what it is. Those are the facts. But I am very curious if the tables were turned and it was a pro-Trump, anti-mask rally or protest, and armed members of Antifa showed up, and then there was some sort of tussle where an Antifa member shot and killed a Trump supporter, and you look at video and it's similar to what we saw with the Kyle Rittenhouse video. Would we get similar reactions?
No, look, everybody knows the answer. If it could be Antifa, if black militants went into the middle of an anti-vax protest or any right-wing protest, heavily armed, and then one of the anti-vax guys pushed them, and then they started killing them, right? Oh, the black guys are going to be celebrated as heroes in the right wing for killing right wingers because they were using their Second Amendment rights and they were just doing self-defense. Get out of here. Nobody thinks that. You know that. You're all liars. But on top of that, hey, let's take your own so-called principles and logic, right? So Kyle Rittenhouse, man, look, if he gets acquitted, that means he was innocent and a wonderful guy who's been smeared, right? I got news for you. O.J. Simpson was also acquitted. So if that's your logic, then you all owe OJ a giant apology. It turns out being acquitted means you're a wonderful human being who is innocent of everything. No, it just means in reality that they didn't have evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. It doesn't mean that you did something morally correct. Kyle Rittenhouse still went there with terrible intent, with heavily armed, and wound up killing two people that would be alive today if it wasn't for goddamn Rittenhouse.
And I want to just look, Cenk said something that was pretty harsh in this video, right? They couldn't wait to get there with their guns. They couldn't wait to shoot people.
100%.
Hold on. But I want to, if you think that's too harsh, I just want you to consider this. Now, this is information, this is evidence that was considered inadmissible in court during the Rittenhouse case. But I think it is relevant to understand some of Rittenhouse's intentions here. So video taken 2 weeks before the Kenosha shooting showed Rittenhouse talking about an AR rifle and wanting to shoot people he allegedly thought were looting a CVS store. Prosecutors said the video shows that he eagerly made assumptions about the intentions of others, even though he knew absolutely nothing about what was going on. The video also demonstrates that the defendant fervently sought to insert himself as an armed vigilante into situations that had nothing to do with him, court documents allege.
Okay, the judge in this case is an absolute joke, so that's not admissible. But wait a minute, if I'm the family members of the people who were killed, you're telling me we can't tell the jury deciding that he bragged about how he intended to kill people with his weapon, and then he killed people with his weapon just like he intended, and he's on the record as saying, no, you can't admit that. All right, can we at least call the people who were killed victims? No, you cannot call them victims. You must call them arsonists or looters or rioters. There's no evidence indicating any of them were arsonists, looters, or rioters. The judge might as well hide Rittenhouse under his robe. Like, are you okay? Are you okay, my beloved right-wing son? Don't worry, I'll let you kill anybody. Anyway, look, guys, like Anna said, it's a complicated and nuanced case, and there is a legitimate, I don't know how I would vote on the jury, but I get that there's a legitimate self-defense argument here, especially in regards to the guy who didn't die, who got shot in the arm because he was carrying a weapon.
And pointing at him.
And it appears pointing at Rittenhouse. But the other guy had a skateboard, another guy who was killed, another guy who was killed had a plastic bag. So, okay, you could say, oh yeah, anybody with a plastic bag should be murdered if they throw it at me. You're right-wingers, you probably do believe that. Anything that's a mild threat, that's an excuse to murder people, you probably love. That's why Rittenhouse is your hero. But let's go to Tulsi, because the next set of lies she's gonna tell shows you how pathetic she has become. Pathetic. This is on Tucker Carlson's show. And look at her blame the racial issues on Democrats, but not her beloved right-wingers.
Go ahead. Hold on. Before we get to Tucker, because there are two videos I want to get to. Listen, we need to get to the first clip where she's talking about whether Rittenhouse should have been prosecuted in the first place. And then I'm gonna explain why yes, he should have been prosecuted. Let's watch.
The prosecutor in this Rittenhouse trial obviously did not do his due diligence before making the decision to prosecute. This tragedy never would have happened if the government had simply carried out its responsibilities to protect the safety, lives, and property of innocent people.
Okay, so let me remind everyone that Rittenhouse is facing 6 charges, okay? One of those charges is possession of an illegal weapon, and that's the gun that he had, the AR-15 that was purchased for him by a friend in Wisconsin. Now, he was 17 at the time. He could not legally be in possession of that gun because of his age. He admitted just recently on the stand that yes, I was in possession of an illegal gun. I'm paraphrasing, but that was the gist of what he said. He confessed to that. So is Tulsi Gabbard saying that if you're in possession of an illegal weapon, you shouldn't face any prosecution, you shouldn't face any consequences? The other issue is, look, whether you like it or not, 2 individuals are gone, they're dead. And their families deserve to know what happened. And to not prosecute and to not investigate and to not figure out what went down that day, I think it's a miscarriage of justice. So if he's cleared of the homicide charges, and it looks like that's likely to happen, at least we know that there was a trial, evidence was presented, everyone can look at that evidence, and this is how we carry out justice in the country. To say like he shouldn't have been prosecuted at all is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I have only one comment about that part. She said, if the government had just done their jobs, poor Kyle Rittenhouse wouldn't have had to go there and shoot people. What do you mean by the government? Whose job is it to protect the security of people? It's the police. Why don't you say it that way then? Notice how she's using right-wing talking points, but actually blaming the cops. But she won't say the cops because then she'll lose her right-wing audience and her right-wing funding.
That's right. And then she went on Tucker Carlson, of course, to make a point about what Democrats do that she has a problem with. Let's watch.
The problem that we have now is leaders who are so willing to manipulate the American people to further their own selfish political interests or money or power or whatever it is. And we see this very clearly in how everything in our country is being racialized. That this is an intentional strategy to tear us apart based on the color of our skin because they think that there's some political gain to be had from it. And they don't care at all about the destruction that they leave in their wake. And this is what we as voters need to reject and choose leaders who do put the American people in our country first, who share that objective from both political parties.
Yeah, the example you just gave, which is at the center of so much of the rhetoric, is such an obvious dead end. It's the end point of that is violence and division. Everyone can tell.
Now, understand that Tulsi Gabbard is on Tucker Carlson's show, the guy who refers to immigrants as filthy. Right, the guy who makes race issues the centerpiece of his programming, and not in a positive way to better the country, but to literally rip the country apart by racial lines, right?
Yeah.
And it's just, I mean, look, she knows what she's doing. And really, do we have to explain what's really going on here? I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah, so she said there that the Democrats are racializing the country. She went on to say it again after Tucker went and said that they're the ones, Democrats are the ones sowing division in this country. Now look, if you want to say, hey, corporate Democrats play identity politics and they use it as cover for actually helping their donors while we're distracted by culture war issues.
That would be true.
We would agree with that, right? But if you pretend like it's just Democrats doing it and the most left Democrats, i.e. progressives, right? But that the Republicans are not doing it, that the guy whose show you're on, that Tucker Carlson is not doing it, and it is the left's fault that we're being driven apart and divided on racial issues. That is so beyond absurd.
What's their shiny little object right now for the Republican Party? What's their shiny little distraction?
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory, huh?
And then there's Tulsi doing a talking point about how the Democrats are, the problem on the race issue. If black people and minorities and Muslims would just shut up and know their role, that Tucker has told them, they will not replace us Americans, Tulsi says. Okay, so she's gone.
She was gone from the very beginning.
No, look, Anna, you called out before anybody else realized it. There's still some, I feel so sad for them. People who think they're on the left, who got totally catfished into or fish hooked into.
No, catfished is good.
Oh, catfished, okay.
Or fish hooked, either one works, but.
Oh, they're like, oh no.
She does yoga videos. And she goes surfing.
Yeah. And
total progressive.
Total, yeah. And she's, she's not for Medicare for All anymore. And she's for racializing things where we blame minorities. But she's more left, is she? Is she? Okay, anyways, the jury's in. Tulsi Gabbard is now officially a right-winger, and not because she had any change of heart or she can point to policy differences or anything. No, she's getting paid by Rumble. She's trying to be a Fox News contributor. It's the saddest, most pathetic ending to a career. Only equaled by Glenn Greenwald, who's kissing her ass all over social media. He took that clip and said, I don't understand what's anything objectionable about what Tulsi's saying. Oh, Glenn, what an embarrassing, humiliating end to your career. You needed the Rumble money? That's what you needed? You can't tell the Tucker Carlson, your beloved friend Tucker Carlson is driving racial division in this country. You missed that? Look, Dumbledore might have missed it. Dave Rubin hasn't had a thought in his mind. Ever. You could make a defense for them that they're too stupid to understand. You can't make that defense for Glenn Greenwald. He knows what he's doing. It's the epitome of pathetic and humiliating.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, the son of Glenn Youngkin apparently tried to vote illegally in his father's election twice. What happened after that? We got that story and more when we return.
What's happening? I'm Rashad Richey, host of Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey right here on TYT. Let me tell you what we do on Indisputable. We go beyond the headline. We make sure that you know the full context of the story. And we also highlight issues that are important to the everyday person. We're talking about criminal justice reform. We're talking about the climate. We're talking about what's happening right in your local community. We also highlight very important issues that are affecting all of us, like the economy, jobs, and we engage in transparent debates with people who may not think like me. We're living in a current social atmosphere where opinions are represented as facts and lies are represented as truth. Make sure you tune in to Indisputable with Dr. Rashad Richey, Monday through Friday, 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 11:30 a.m. Pacific Time.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm new to TikTok, but about 3 years ago, I started my daily political news show, The Damage Report, because I noticed this trend where every morning I was waking up to this tsunami of news that was just generally dreadful and horrifying and shocking, and I thought that if I could spend my time helping people to navigate this, serving as a bit of a life raft, pointing out which news is important and why, there are worse ways to spend your day. We're not an average news show, and we don't want our TikTok presence to be average either, so feel free to let us know what you'd like us to do on the platform, and maybe give us a follow at The Damage Report.
All right, Amazon Prime members, here's how you can subscribe for free on Twitch. Start by linking your Amazon Prime account to your Twitch account, and then click that little subscribe or resubscribe button below the stream on Twitch. Scroll down and select the subscribe free with Prime button, and then you're finished. Close out immediately and share your little subscription alert with the chat. Send a cute message along with it, and bathe in the sweet, twitchy, Bezos-funded love. Hashtag Bezos Bucks.
Hey everyone, Mateo Scarapore here, author of Black Buck, which is Shop TYT's first fiction book ever. I'm honored. So, Black Buck is about a young man named Darren who's living in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. He lives with his mom, he has his girlfriend, he has his best friend, he has his neighborhood, and his neighborhood has him. Darren's also working at a Starbucks in Midtown Manhattan. And one day, this man, real suave and good looking, comes in and asks Darren to give him his regular. But for some reason, Darren says no. This man named Rhett Daniels, who's the CEO of a startup called Someone, located on the 36th floor of the same building, is impressed. And he invites Darren upstairs and then he extends an offer to join his elite sales team. Darren reluctantly joins, and he soon realizes that he's not the only black salesperson there. He's the only black person in the entire company. So he goes through hell and back in order to make it to the top. And once there, he has status, money, power, but he says, you know what? I don't like being the token black guy. So he hatches a plan to help other people of color infiltrate America's tech startup sales teams, redefining what it means to be a minority in the workplace. This book definitely, if you couldn't tell, touches on many things that are relevant to this moment that we're all living in right now. But it's also connected to the many moments in history that have come before today. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. And if you want to order a copy, go to shoptyt.com. Thank you, be well, and happy 2021.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news, that's what we do.
A new poll asks American voters how they feel about public schools teaching about American history, but specifically America's history of racism, right? Now, there are some positive results in this poll that are unexpected, but there's also some negative parts that I want to get into. This was done by Monmouth University, and here's what they found. That 43% of survey takers that identified as Republicans said that they are against the teaching of historical racism in public schools, as opposed to only 5% of Democrats who said the same thing. Now, where's the positive part? I would have thought that the Republican percentage would have been much higher, certainly above 50%, but it's only 43%.
Wow, what a positive news. So we only have tens of millions of Americans, not quite 100 million Americans who say, don't even teach racism. Don't teach it. But is it part of our history? I know. Well, we don't want science. We don't want history. I told you they're gonna come after math next. And then eventually they'll get to a point where you're like, don't even teach us how to read. We might learn something. We don't want to learn anything. We just want Tucker Carlson to tell us what's right and Donald Trump to tell us what's right. It's books, they're for liberals and progressives. So history, no, don't teach it. God, how can you possibly teach American history without talking about slavery and the Civil War and Jim Crow and how racism, unfortunately, was an enormous part of this country. Also against Native Americans, also against the Chinese who were banned from this country, also against Latinos, and we can go on and on. They're basically saying, it makes me uncomfortable, because, and then you have to ask, why does it make you uncomfortable? It doesn't make me uncomfortable.
It's just that their feelings don't care about the facts, you know?
Yeah, there you go. It's because they take it personally, because they're still racist. If you're not racist, why would you take it personally? Like if they said, hey, we're gonna tell you about the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. Which right winger would jump up and go, no, don't teach the history of what happened in Cambodia?
I mean, who knows?
Maybe because they're pro, mass extermination. I don't know. But I'm giving that to you as an example, seriously, of, well, you wouldn't be bothered by it if you weren't personally affected by it. You wouldn't say, hey, don't teach the Industrial Revolution. Why not? That's part of our history, right? You're only saying don't teach it because it makes you uncomfortable because you're racist. So it's 43% of Republicans saying do not teach American history correctly. Lie to the kids, just lie to them. At a best case scenario, omit giant parts of our history to make us feel better.
And you know what? They're so well organized and so well funded that it's likely that they'll get exactly what they want, even though it's not the majority of Republican voters. And even though the country isn't just dominated by Republican voters, there are also voters who actually want their kids to be educated in the public school system. And so, I mean, they're free to take their kids out of the public school system and either put them in private schools or homeschool them. But of course, that's not what they're gonna do. And so looking at Democrats, 94% of Democrats and 54% of Republicans said that they were in fact in favor of teaching about the history of racism.
Well, I want to make a point about that too, Anna. First of all, Democrats, 5% said also don't teach.
I know, it's kind of incredible, right?
So let's just note that 5% of Democrats are in the same boat. And then, so those Reagan Democrats or Trump Democrats, are they really Democrats? Anyways, and then, but to be fair, look, what I've been saying on the show is half of Republicans, it's the only correct thing that Hillary Clinton ever said, and she took the most heat for it. Half of Republicans are deplorables. So don't teach racism, don't teach history, don't teach science, just teach our insane propaganda, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want me to, you're crying, oh no, you can't say half of Republicans are racist. Look at the polls, right? But credit to the other half, 54%, about more than half said, no, of course we should teach history. So that there is a big part of the Republican voters that are redeemable, that you could say to them, hey guys, if you're looking for who screwed you, don't look down, look up. You can make an economic argument too, and they might listen to it. So there is actually good news in that.
But here's what the problem is, okay? As we've spoken about before, critical race theory, which is part of a graduate level curriculum, is now being used as a catch-all phrase, right? It's anything having to do with race is now considered critical race theory in public schools. At least that's the way the Republican Party is marketing the issue to its voters. So voters on their side are absolutely convinced that their children are learning a graduate level curriculum in like 4th grade, which is hilarious, but that's what's happening. And unfortunately, when that happens, regular American history, not graduate level theory, is being cut out of curriculum in schools. Like we just did a story yesterday about a principal in Texas who was accused of sanctioning critical race theory in his high school. And so the board of trustees for that school district voted unanimously not to renew his contract. Guys, doesn't have a job right now as a result, okay? So they're already-
Free speech.
Cancel culture. Cancel culture is a real problem, right?
The Republicans are a joke. You're a giant joke.
All right, but I give you that preface to the second half of this Monmouth University poll, because here's what they found. When respondents were asked about whether they approved of the teaching of critical race theory, 78% of Republicans disapproved, with only 16% saying they were in favor of the practice. So whether Republican voters are in favor of teaching US history or not, it's irrelevant when the majority of them are convinced that students aren't just learning US history in grade school. They're learning this shadowy graduate level curriculum called critical race theory, which by the way, critical race theory just focuses on systemic racism, like structures in our society that perpetuate racism, right? Which, when you really think of like, why is that a scary thing to teach people, right? So if they had a way of boiling it down to a grade school level curriculum, is it really that awful to teach kids about that? Have they really stopped to think about that?
No, they have no idea what critical race theory is. Every time they're asked on camera, they're like, I don't know what it is, but I hate it. That means don't teach racism. So yes, we're being generous in the earlier part of the video, but look, the way that it breaks down is 43% saying, no, I don't want any real history taught because it hurts my feelings. 35% can easily be tricked into thinking, oh, they're being racist against white people. Oh no, don't teach that evil thing. They're very easily manipulated, but there's still some hope in that 35%. And then credit to the 16% who maybe disagree with us about taxes or actual policy, right? But think, no, well, in fact, they're in favor of teaching critical race theory in the high schools, apparently based on that poll, when it's not even being taught. So that's 16% of Republicans. Hey, let's have a debate. Another 35% we can get to, but they can keep watching the Tucker Carlson propaganda that's brainwashing you with nothing but lies. Just tune into one other thing, and maybe we can open up your mind to what the actual facts are.
All right, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about Glenn Youngkin's son attempting to vote illegally twice. It's fascinating how voter fraud and all those voter issues don't really matter to Republicans once one of their own is engaging in it. So we've got that story and more. Stick around.
I want you to take on the spirit of one of my sheroes, Tubman, who said these words: if you hear the dogs barking, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going.
Is it right or wrong that somebody has a living wage? Is it right or wrong to have paid family medical leave? Is it right or wrong to cancel student debt? Is it right or wrong to make sure that no matter who you love, how you identify, that you get the opportunity to live a good life too? This boils down to right or wrong. It's just that simple.
It's about saying to people who work for you, this will not be tolerated on horseback, on bicycle, on tricycle. You will not treat people like this. They are human beings.
Because with these hands, we will rise.
Nina Turner steps into the direct fire sometimes in the name of the people.
And is that we have become numb to some of the very real challenges in this country.
They don't care. I want to say something else, but I know we're going to keep the PG. They just don't care.
You get to keep your doctor. Don't let them scare you about that because it's not government taking over the service. Dr. Dooley, can I get an amen? Okay, we got a doctor in the house.
If you want clean water, clean air, clean food, keep going. If you want a better country, a better world for yourselves and future generations, you must. And if you know that we are in this fight together, you must.
Did you know that more than 20% of the world's oxygen comes from the Amazon? Why? Because of trees. I know what you're thinking. Of course! So what do we want to do? We want to plant more trees so we can save the climate. It's quite literal. So that's what leads to our new partner, Plant Your Change. Love it. It's so easy. What they do is you take the credit or debit cards you already have and you plug it into the system. And if you so choose, you get to round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and they plant a tree for you, okay? Now you could also choose if you wanna do it on only certain kinds of purchases or only so often, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but literally every cent makes a difference here. It's Plant Your Change, and if you wanna know more information, just go to tyt.com/trees. Let's go save the planet together.
No, top. No. No. No.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet. All right, back on TYT, Jen and Anna with you guys. A lot more news, so let's get to it.
The son of Virginia's governor-elect, Glenn Youngkin, apparently tried to vote twice in his father's election, even though he's underage and is not legally permitted to do so. What's fascinating about this story is the lack of response from Republican politicians who claim that voter fraud is such an important issue that they have suppressed the vote in various red states. But also Glenn Youngkin's dismissive response is important too. But before we get to that, context matters. Let me give you the details. Youngkin's son, who is not being named because he's a minor, tried unsuccessfully to vote at a polling place in Great Falls, Virginia, which was not the assigned voting location for his home address, officials told News 4, an NBC news television affiliate in Washington, D.C. Now, election workers turned the teen away after they determined he was ineligible to vote. Fairfax County election officials said he returned, though. He returned 30 minutes later and requested another ballot before being turned away again, News 4 reported. And then the Office of Elections released a statement about this, and I think the statement's fascinating. They say, this morning, November 5th, 2021, the General Registrar was made aware of concerns that a 17-year-old male attempted on 2 occasions to vote on election day. The young man presented identification, but was ineligible to be registered due to his age and was not permitted to vote. The man did not vote. He made no false statements. He did not disrupt voting. Okay.
Plus, he's a Republican and can get away with everything.
And so, look, I think I want to juxtapose this story to another story in just a minute. But before I do it, let's go to Glenn Youngkin and his reaction to this as reporters asked about it.
Reports that your son's trying to vote for this election. Can you explain it out there? Yeah, it was silliness. I think there's real confusion on where a 17-year-old can vote or not, and so he had a friend who suggested that he might be able to vote. He went up and asked. I know my son really well. He's an incredibly respectful young man, and he presented his ID. And when they said he couldn't vote, he said okay, and he went to school. So I am a little bit frustrated that it's become, the media paid so much attention to it. It's my 17-year-old son, and I really would like everybody to leave my family alone.
Now, look, I want to be clear about something before I give you a juxtaposition, okay? I don't think that this 17-year-old should be imprisoned, okay? I don't think that he's necessarily a bad kid. He wanted to vote for his dad in this election, and he's not legally permitted to do so. He tried to do it twice, but not legally permitted to do so. But again, what we keep hearing from Republican officials, including Glenn Youngkin, is, look, he doesn't understand what the voting laws are, even though I think it's pretty much common knowledge that you need to be 18 years old to vote, but okay, fine. He's citing ignorance as a defense here. Now, it's fascinating how it works for this 17-year-old son of Glenn Youngkin, but that defense didn't work for Crystal Mason, who is serving a 5-year prison sentence because she was not allowed to vote, but she didn't know she wasn't allowed to vote. So here's a headline from The Guardian. Texas upholds sentence, again, 5-year sentence for woman who didn't know she was ineligible to vote. Crystal Mason was previously sentenced to 5 years in prison for a mistaken vote that was not counted. So her vote wasn't even counted. Apparently, to give you more details to that story, in 2016, Mason was on supervised release, similar to probation, for a federal felony conviction related to tax fraud. She didn't know that Texas prohibits felons from voting until they finish their sentence entirely. Mason voted in the presidential election at the urging of her mother and cast a provisional ballot when poll workers couldn't find her name on the voter registration rolls. The ballot was never counted because Mason was not eligible or was not an eligible voter. Didn't matter. The judge was like, nah, you gotta serve a prison sentence now because you tried to commit voter fraud. And so look, her defense was ignorance of the law, right? Of the Texas law. But that defense didn't work. And so does Mason deserve to be in prison right now? I'd argue no.
Yeah, let her go. Let her go. So look, guys, the hypocrisy here is obvious. So first of all, did the kid knew what he was doing? Yeah, Youngkin misstated the facts there, obviously on purpose. He said, oh, he tried to vote because he didn't know, and then he just went right back to school. No, he didn't, as we showed you. The authorities say he came back a second time and tried to cheat again, right? And it wasn't even his own district where he's supposed to be voting, right? So he did several things wrong. He seemed to be doing it on purpose. I'm with Anna. We're not going to give the kid a life sentence. I don't think he should go to prison for a day. There should be some sort of consequence, a fine, something to say, hey, this is wrong. But whatever the consequence is, it should be the same exact one for Crystal Mason. But it's the same Republicans. Youngkin won on there's no systemic racism in America, right? A black woman gets 5 years in prison. 5 years in prison. A white boy, oh, just come on, he's a good kid.
No, and look, 17 years old, you should know that you need to be 18 to vote. Like Everyone knows.
No, his dad's running. Oh, just ask your dad. If you're not sure, ask your dad. He's the one running for governor.
Right.
He would probably know. And you could certainly ask him after the first time before you went in the second time. Did he do it? He definitely did it. It should be a very light punishment for both of them. That's super obvious. And now let's note other hypocrisies. The Republicans. Now, oh, my son, leave my family alone. How could you guys do this? By the way, Hunter Biden's the worst, and Joe Biden should be punished for everything Hunter Biden's ever done. Come on, guys. Your hypocrisy is so obvious. You guys are jokes, total utter jokes. I've got more. So when they were having the election, I just have to squeeze this in. He's the CEO of Carlyle Group, one of the biggest private equity groups in the world, okay? So this goes to the point of how Democrats don't know how to fight back. So Crystal Mason goes to prison, nobody says anything about it. Youngest son obviously commits this crime. Everybody's like, oh, back away because of his family, right? Mm-hmm. So this guy made money off of laying people off. And Terry McAuliffe did a light attempt at saying, oh, he's a private equity bad guy. And then everybody, Youngkin, made fun of him in a debate because he said, Terry, apparently we were so good, you invested with us.
Oh,
okay.
So pathetic. The Democrats are so pathetic. Listen, if you're a right winger who hate watches us, I guess we can agree that Democrats are pathetic.
Yes. So McAuliffe then said, well, I didn't even make money off of it. That's a defense?
Oh my God.
You're pathetic. And then Youngkin said, that's not true. Yes, you did. I know, I was the CEO. Okay, and then they did a fact check on it. Of course McAuliffe made money off of it. He made a lot of money off of it, right? So then he backpedals. He's like, never mind. Private equity and you guys getting fired so he can get rich and I can get rich is awesome. And then when they lose, because their candidate's a loser, they go, I was a progressive assault. AOC made me lose. That's the state of the Democratic Party.
It's amazing. All right, well, let's shift the focus back to the state of the Republican Party and Republican talking heads like Candace Owens. So, Candace Owens understands that Americans, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, conservatives or liberals, are absolutely fed up with the corporate takeover of our government. And so she wants to get a little of that action in regard to the populist rhetoric that we're seeing resonate with voters. And so she's like, I know people aren't fans of pharmaceutical companies, but I love corporate America. I love the tax cuts for the rich. I love the fact that pharmaceutical companies are gouging Americans to the point where they're paying 2 to 3 times more for pharmaceutical drugs compared to other developed countries. But how can I go after pharmaceutical companies from like a culture war perspective? I got it, Sesame Street. What? Okay, well, Candace Owens is mad at Sesame Street because they put out a segment educating children about the coronavirus vaccine. That's like the latest manufactured culture war outrage that conservatives are engaging in. But listen to her rhetoric here, because she presents herself as someone who's against pharmaceutical companies, and I think it's fascinating. Let's watch.
The left claims conservatives are melting down over Sesame Street. Conservatives are mad about Big Bird. No, it's not Big Bird that we're melting down over. Big Bird is harmless. What conservatives, or any individual with a thinking brain, is upset about and what we are responding to is the big pharma pervert dressed up as Big Bird to coax children away from the decisions of their parents.
Children would need to deal with their parents if they wanted to get the coronavirus vaccine. I don't know if she knows that. It's not like children can just like freely go wherever they want and get vaccinated and do whatever they want. But nonetheless, like, put that aside for a second. Why is Big Bird a pervert? I love how the right wing just like randomly decides to paint whoever or whatever their opposition is as a pervert. Is that what they do now? I mean, like, how pathetic is that? Do you have an actual argument, or are you just gonna smear and label people you don't like as perverts?
So we're gonna get to how she's trying to distract you from what Big Pharma is actually doing, right? And how we can help your family, and she doesn't want that. She's ironically supporting Big Pharma here, as we're gonna show you. But she doesn't want you to know the policy parts, because her position adds to your costs. You can't take your drugs because of how expensive it is. So she distracts you with, I wonder if Big Bird's a child predator. Because that's the only thing they got. They got culture wars and everyone who opposes us is a child predator. So it was only a matter of time before they went after Sesame Street. Everything that we know and love in America, they've attacked, right? Equality, they hate it. Justice, they hate it, right? Same rights for everybody, including gay people, trans people, they hate it, right? Science, they hate it. Yeah. So now, of course, Sesame Street's wondering, incoming, 3, 2, 1, and now they hit them. Now, let's talk about Big Pharma.
Yeah, let's talk about Big Pharma because it is fascinating that Candace Owens is very upset with Big Pharma, but she's not upset with Big Pharma over the fact that they're price gouging Americans when it comes to prescription drugs. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she's on the record somewhere supporting the provision in the Build Back Better agenda that would allow for Medicare to negotiate directly with pharmaceutical companies to lower drug prices. Has she been on the record in favor of that? No, she's actually against those types of provisions and against those types of policy proposals. So whenever you hear these faux populists on the right pretend to want to hold corporations accountable, it is never in regard to these corporations refusing to pay their fair share in taxes, getting welfare from the federal government in the form of research and development money, in the form of subsidies, in the form of massive tax cuts. I mean, it's a redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the very top. Right? Is she against that? No, she's not against that. She protects that. She wants to maintain that system. She loves it. The only time you hear the right wing want to hold corporate America accountable is when corporate America does something that goes against their stupid, pathetic, like superficial, surface level culture war garbage. That's it, that's all it is. Okay, so Candace Owens doesn't give a crap about a single member of her audience. She doesn't care if they can't afford the EpiPen. She doesn't care if they can't afford insulin. She doesn't care about any of that. What she does care about though is making herself look good as someone who purports to want to hold Big Pharma accountable. Give me a break, it's absolute garbage. No one's falling for it.
Okay, so I used to kid around about when they don't want you to focus on economic issues, they'll just go squirrel, right? And that's the entire essence of the culture wars. In this case, it's almost literal. They're like bird.
Totally, totally. Like Seuss,
right?
Potato head,
cat in a hat. Okay,
it's just so dumb.
So she's for higher drug prices.
Yes.
Pharmaceutical companies love her position on policy. They love it. Every single Republican in the Senate is with her on this issue, also in Congress, okay, in the House side. So they're all like, yes, higher drug price for Americans because we're gonna get money from the big drug companies. But I called Big Bird a pervert, so I got him.
And by the way, it wasn't just a quick passing statement that she made in the middle of a rant. She decided to dig in on the whole pervert point. So let's hear if she has any evidence for why Big Bird is a pervert. Let's watch.
This is the kind of stuff parents warn their children about on playgrounds. Kids are told, if an old man approaches you in a car and offers you candy to get inside, you run, you scream, you say no. What this despicable segment masquerading as a children's program actually represents is Big Pharma using the candy tactic. You like candy, right? You like Big Bird, right? Well, do what I say and you'll be able to have that. What this is filth. It's perverse, brainwashing filth. These are child predators looking to persuade children to take action without the advising consent of their parents. People that prey on children, all of them, no matter who they are, no matter how far up the political hierarchy they exist, they belong in prison.
Candace Owens, by the way, just to put it out there, was a supporter of Roy Moore, who was preying on underage girls in Alabama.
So
you want to talk about perverts? I'm happy to talk about perverts. She loves perverts. Certainly supported perverts to the point where she wanted them in positions of power in our government. So
she thinks Big Bird should be arrested because he's a child predator because he said, hey, I protected myself by getting the vaccine, which 99% of the world's scientists and doctors agree with. These people have lost their, look, to be fair to Candace Owens, she's just a crook. She hasn't lost her mind at all. She loves drug companies. She loves higher prices on drugs. She wants to distract you, and she gets paid for this filth. And so everything she said there was projection. Their side, she literally wanted to put a child predator into the Senate.
Yep.
So, and the guy who she looks up to, Donald Trump, is one of his best friends with Jeffrey Epstein. And when his co-conspirator Ghislaine Maxwell was arrested on 2 separate occasions, Trump said, "I wish her well."
I wish her well.
The biggest child molester in this country.
Rapist.
Okay. She was the co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein, and Trump's like, "I wish her well." And then you're worried about Big Bird? All those so-called Republican leaders and pundits like Candace Owens, they're just the biggest crooks you've ever seen. It's a grift. She used to call herself a progressive. She sued because she said she was discriminated against because she was black. And now she turns around and says there's no racism. Just a con man through and through. Look, I don't know how they live with themselves. So for her and for all the grifters, was it worth it? You soulless, you can fill in 1,000 adjectives here, okay? But you're gonna go to your grave knowing that you screwed everyone over for your selfish profit. You're disgusting. The rest of us loathe you and treat with incredible contempt that you deserve.
All right, roided cops when we come back.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really expensive switcher and said, you guys need this, and walked out. Okay, it's amazing. They helped us build a studio. They did a $2 million funding campaign for us. And so they really are us. We do this show together to the point where some of our hosts are even former listeners. So when we say that the audience is part of TYT, we really mean it.
I think what the audience also appreciates is especially if they're members, they really get an inside look into who we are, our personal lives, what drives and motivates us. It goes beyond just storytelling. I think that what we do is allow our viewers and our listeners into our daily lives, and we give them kind of like this inside look into everything that we're passionate about and why it is that we're doing what we're doing, right? Like the motivation behind what we're doing, I think is important for our audience to know, and we're not shy about sharing that with them. And it's different from what people typically see in legacy media outlets where everything is kind of dry and robotic and there's really no personality or authenticity that comes along with it. Oftentimes when we're doing the show, I don't really think of it as me telling them stories. I think of it as us having a mutual respect and conversation with one another. And as I said earlier, I mean, not only do I feel that through the work I do, I'm informing our audience, but they inform me oftentimes as well. They'll pitch stories to us. They'll tell us, a certain perspective or angle to a story that we might have missed. And I love it.
At TYT, our vision is to be the leading global brand in news and talk by serving the audience with authentic commentary and analysis and to become the digital campfire for the world. And we plan to accomplish that by serving the audience with uniquely authentic commentary and analysis. Put another way, we seek to make TYT into the digital campfire for the world. Today, the traditional mainstream media, along with the government and many of our cherished institutions, have unfortunately been captured by corporate interests. Audiences increasingly sense that they're not getting the whole story or even the truth from once trusted outlets, whether it's broadcast and cable TV news networks or national newspapers and magazines. Instead, the audience is turning to alternative news sources online. The TYT network preeminent among them. Unlike our competitors in the traditional media, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to big pharma. And unlike conservative sites online, we're not bankrolled by billionaires looking to push their right-wing propaganda. We only answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've delivered by producing honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor or concern for whose toes we might step on or which powerful elites we might offend.
Hi, I'm Bartholomew Joseph Kyle. I do audio for the main show, The Young Turks. I also do audio for Post Game. I started in 2006. I met Cenk Uygur at the Iraq for Sale screening that was directed by Robert Greenwald. And watching that, I want to figure out a way to be part of something that's genuine and authentic.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna, take it away.
All right, let's do it.
With their policies of open borders, defund the police, think of this, destroy the Second Amendment, no energy independence, no voter ID, high taxes, rampant crime throughout our cities like nobody's ever seen before. There are far more of us than there are of them.
During a recent rally, a Donald Trump rally, he made it clear that he's actually pretty much in favor of cancel culture. He specifically wants to cancel companies that don't go along with conservative ideology. Let's watch.
We need nationwide boycotts of companies that don't believe in Republicans and conservative principles. We're not going to buy their product if they're not going to buy our policy, if they're not going to respect us. We're not going to do it. Watch how quickly these companies will change if we do this, and we're going to boycott the media that doesn't treat us fairly.
And so what is he specifically referring to when he talks about conservative ideology and corporations that don't go along with it? Well, he outlines that in the next clip.
You should save America's suburbs from Biden's CRT-inspired housing agenda. You should force the Interior Department to build the National Garden of American Heroes that I announced in my speech at Mount Rushmore. You should stop all federal taxpayer dollars from going to big tech monopoly. I congratulate Kevin on his announcement that the House GOP will be introducing a Parents' Bill of Rights. That's so beautiful. The sound of that is so beautiful. And I hope it includes a right for any parent to opt out of the indoctrination and send their child to the public, private, charter, or faith-based school of their choice. These are the kind of bold ideas House Republicans should run on and win on.
Okay, so he's striking out against all these companies, and he says if they don't follow our principles, we should cancel them, right? If it's, for example, a credit card company, I guess that would be the most literal cancel culture because you'd cancel your credit card. Okay, so that's pretty on the nose there when it comes to cancel culture.
What is CRT-inspired housing policy?
No, that's my favorite part. I mean, look, the essence of it is him trying to do these boycotts, and we'll get back to that in a second. But that hilarious side note, it just almost swallows up the whole video.
I couldn't pay attention to anything else after he said that. I was like, what?
Critical race theory housing agenda? What? But like,
let's just apply critical race theory to everything we don't like.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, these critical race blueberries are not as ripe as advertised. Okay, and I'm really mad about it.
Cancel them.
Okay, and how about this critical race theory Cocoa Pebbles? That they're not as crispy as I wanted. Okay, what is he talking about?
We want vanilla pebbles, okay?
Baby, that makes more sense than the critical race theory housing agenda. 100%. One is an educational theory about how to teach racism in the country. The other one is housing. Like, if you want to talk about like racism in housing, I don't know. I guess he means racism against white people in housing. That's like, That's not even a talking point that the right wing has. But even then, you wouldn't say it's a critical race theory about housing discrimination. It makes no sense. It's not even trying to make sense. Okay, so.
But the best part is, well, there's two things. Here's a serious point. It's just a continuation of, and I think it's actually working to some extent, right? It's a continuation of the right wing wanting to get a little bit of that populist action because they know Americans are so fed up with corporate America. So it's like, how can we hold corporate America accountable, but without attacking them for the things that we not only love, but have championed, right? So corporate takeover of this country, price gouging, redistribution of wealth from the bottom to the very top. They love it, they can't get enough of it, they wanna protect that. But they want to appear to be holding corporate America accountable. So they're like, corporate America, too woke. We are going to cancel them because they are woke. But also, I don't even really know what they're specifically referring to. Like, did Pepsi come out with something recently that was like too woke? Corporate America right now is too distracted with defeating Biden's Build Back Better agenda that was supposed to provide social spending to Americans to better their lives. Corporate America ain't focusing on the cultural stuff right now. They're focusing on ensuring they pay nothing in taxes. That's their priority.
Yeah, look, a lot of this started with Nike, and they're like, when they use Colin Kaepernick in an ad, they're like, oh, they're not racist against Kaepernick. Oh, we hate Nike now. Why aren't you racist like us?
We're gonna burn our shoes.
Okay, that's it. We're canceling you for not being racist enough. Now, corporations used to be our friends, and they used to discriminate against people. Now they want to sell to everyone and make more money? That doesn't make sense. Okay, now look, guys, two really important notes of hypocrisy here, though. Number one, they say, oh my God, we're all in favor of freedom of speech. Remember, Donald Trump was the president of the United States of America, the head of the federal government, big government. And he's saying if corporations say something we don't like, they should be punished. Now, that would be the biggest violation of freedom of speech pretty much ever, especially if he was still president. And he used to say things like that when he was president, right? And now he's threatening to run again. And he's like, if I get back in charge, we'll kill freedom of speech. And if anyone disagrees with us, we'll cancel them, okay? Now, the second hypocrisy. You're against corporate America. You lowered their taxes from 35% to 21%. You gave them a historic tax cut. That means the rest of us have to pay more in taxes and fines and fees and all the different ways that the government charges us when we can barely afford it. Those corporations are now multi-trillion-dollar companies. They make incredible billions of dollars in profits, and Trump didn't punish them. He gave them literally the biggest gift in American history. Now he has the temerity to come out and say, I'm against corporate America. Wink. And meanwhile, they're still donating to him like there's nobody's business because they know he's their best friend. So this is why right wingers, when we tell you that Trump's a liar, it's not just like, oh, he's a bad guy and we want you to not like him. He's lying to you, He's taking your frustration with big business that's crushing you. You're right to be frustrated, and he's using it to help big business.
Absolutely. And look, I'm gonna speak my mind. Some people might not like it, but it is what it is. Look, whether you're on the left or the right, please stop with the goofy boycotts because they don't work, okay? They never work, they never will work. Remember the Goya boycott?
No.
What happened? Yeah, exactly, yeah. But what happened to the Goya? Like, you guys, organize labor, fight back in a way that has been proven to work in this nation's history, okay? Individual actions like a boycott, it's never gonna work, it's super goofy. There needs to be an actual movement behind it. An organized movement behind it.
I think it totally depends, but that's a discussion for another day.
Let's talk about the gayest generation, according to a totally invalid and non-credible survey. So, Charlie Kirk is very concerned about the fact that this is the gayest generation. Millennials allegedly happen to be the gayest generation. Now, is there any accuracy to that? You're gonna have to wait and see. First, let's hear from the brilliant Charlie Kirk.
the country, being an American, 15% of millennials say they are proud to be an American. 15% say they are proud to be an American. As I mentioned, 1/3 of millennials describe themselves as being LGBTQ, 39%. 39%. It's 3 times the proportion identified among the combined older adults in a generation. This is the gayest generation in American history. And that's not a slur, by the way. It's not a slander. It's just the way it is. Someone's going to say, oh, that's a pejorative. They're the gayest generation in American history. It's what the study says.
Well, I mean, look, LGBTQ does have a lot of letters in it. It's a lot of different types of people with different types of identities. So, I mean, but it's not like something happened with millennials. Like all of a sudden people decided to identify in one way or the other because it became more acceptable. Maybe society has always been the way it is in terms of like sexual orientation and identity, but now with more tolerance, people feel more comfortable coming out. But look, that argument is irrelevant right now because I think it's important to focus on what study or what survey Charlie Kirk is referencing here. He gets specific. And he loves to talk about, the credibility of studies and the methodology and like what's really accurate here. So it's weird that he omitted the fact that this was a survey done by the fundamentalist Arizona Christian University.
Huh.
I'm sure there was no bias there.
No.
I'm sure this was, the methodology was sound. I'm positive. I'm being sarcastic, but nonetheless, the study also stated this, which I thought was interesting. God determined our sexual identity from before the time we were conceived by our parents. In fact, as creatures designed by God for purposes He ordained before time, we have no authority, much less competence, to make that choice. So I actually respect that because if you're born gay, you're born gay. Like, for a long time, conservatives tended to think that people like just decide to have, like it's a lifestyle choice, and that's not the case. But I think the wording used there is relevant to speak to the lack of credibility of the survey itself. But even if 39% of millennials identified as part of the LGBTQ community, who cares? So what?
Yeah, well, so that's where he betrays himself, which I'll get to in a second. But first of all, I guess now life does not start at conception, it starts before time. So now women, we have to control your bodies 24/7 because God decided who you were gonna be before you even conceived. So that's a new wrinkle, we'll see if they ever get to that. And by the way, they do these fundamentalist Christian talking points. And then it's partly a trick to try to get progressives to attack fundamentalist Christians for their ridiculous interpretation of the Bible so that they could pretend that you're attacking all Christians or all religion, right? So that's part of the trick here. Now, the most important part of this. So he says, no, it's not pejorative. I mean, it's just the gayest generation, but I'm not saying it in a negative way, really? Because right before that, you said 15% of millennials are proud of the country. Now, you were clearly upset about that. That's clearly negative.
We don't know where he got that number from, by the way. That was not part of the survey.
But it's not at all important. No, that's look, I don't actually, those numbers sound right to me. I don't have a bone to pick with the numbers. So, but he says 15% are, but he hates it that only 15% of the millennials are proud of America. Then he goes, and of course they're the gayest generation. No slur. I mean, these millennials suck, right? And now, of course, they're gay. I knew it. No slur, right? Was that in a positive context where you're like, hey, only 15% of millennials love America, and they're the gayest generation? Way to go! Is that how it sounded? Because it didn't sound like that. It sounded like it was super negative the way you were saying it, right? And then the second part of it is also interesting. Now, we've been telling you all along that millennials are incredibly progressive, overwhelmingly progressive.
Just like the guy on the motorcycle texting in the video.
Yeah, I know, these videos are hilarious. Anyway, but Charlie Kirk told you, no, actually, the young are right wing. They're very right wing. And they hate cancel culture and they're macho men who take ivermectin, okay? Well, what happened? You just read the number. It turns out millennials overwhelmingly progressive. They're concerned that the country has a checkered history and because they're rational human beings and they want to teach both the positive and the negative, right? And so, oh wait, Charlie, wasn't it your job to do propaganda to the young? That's the whole point of your organization. You raise around 43 million a year from really wealthy Republicans and conservatives, and you tell them, I'm gonna brainwash the kids into being right wing. Well, looks like you suck at your job. It looks like they're wasting that $40 million a year, and you just admitted it yourself. After all of your hard work at Turning Point USA, ain't nobody turned.
Yeah, look, I just want to say one thing in regard to the scare tactics related to whether or not people love the country or are proud of the country, right? So it's very possible to love something or someone, but not necessarily feel proud toward that person or that thing, especially when that person or that thing is disappointing you, right? So I love this country. I want this country to do better. But it's really hard for me as an American to look at the terrible conditions my fellow Americans are living in, the struggles that my fellow Americans are dealing with, while this country has been taken over by corporate interests. I am not proud of that. I don't look at that and say, I love this, I'm proud. No, I look at that, especially when I see my fellow Americans living on the streets, dying in squalor on the streets, while corporations pay nothing in taxes and get away with everything that they get away with. Price gouging Americans on pharmaceutical drugs and what have you. So I don't know, Charlie, are you proud of that? Does that make you feel proud? I don't feel proud. I love the country. I know what this country is capable of. But what I'm seeing right now in a whole host of political issues is embarrassing. Not proud of it. I want the country to do better. But Charlie Kirk is an enabler. He likes to enable failure. That is what he's paid to do. Yeah. I would argue that that's way less patriotic.
100%. And last thing is, he says America is now, the younger generation is 3 times more gay than the older generation of Americans. I got news for you, Charlie. They aren't. The older generation is 3 times more closeted.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we got to take a break. We've got more news when we come back. Stick around.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join, and you'll get all the behind the scenes of me, Anna, John, JR, a little bit reality show like, tyt.com/join, and enjoy this.
You know what you're seeing behind me? Jersey, hold. Watch me flip this camera. However I flip it. Do I flip it like this? No, I just took a picture. I'm bitsing right now.
What?
Behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. For members? I don't have my face on.
She doesn't have her face on, folks. Oh, that's JR's ass right there.
You can't take 5 minutes off, can you?
No, I can't, Johnny. Bye. I said it was live stream, but I was lying. It's not a live stream. It's just for members. Bitsy, this is my cat. You know what his name is? Kiki Cat.
Animals are innocent.
Control room and the insanity is obviously there.
Right now, as you can see, I'm directing or tech directing.
I'm so happy to be here.
This is what like a Labor Day beard looks like for Cenk. Man, you're a Young Turks viewer if you recognize me like this.
Oh, thank you. You are the one person in my life I would love to meet.
What's going on, guys? This is a Bitsy or a BTS or behind the scenes with Hassan Piker, AKA Woke Bay.
Oh, hi, I didn't see you there.
I have finished my show, The Damage Report, and now I get into a really awkward time of the day.
When I'm sitting, the control room is right there. So I can see Bart.
This is the Pittsburgh office, by the way. Referred to often as the boiler room.
You see how it's ripped? Is it super unprofessional to wear that at a business meeting? Or am I like cool, rebel?
I just finished doing the power panel and I'm fired up.
What do you do for TYT?
Not a whole lot.
If you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it.
And thank you for being a TYT member.
Super last thing, because there's always got to be a super last thing. Oh, that was disastrous. This has been behind the scenes, behind the scenes.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was a white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it, though.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
Back in the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna. All right, a couple more stories.
All right. Man by the name of Ethan Schmidt walked into a Target and decided it would be a great opportunity to heckle workers over the fact that they were carrying an item that he did not like. Let's watch.
Hey, do you guys support the satanic pride propaganda?
Yeah, both.
You support it?
Satan and pride.
You support Satan? What's God gonna think of that?
I don't believe in God.
Wow. So you think?
Did you need help with something?
You support the propaganda that's targeting the kids?
There's nothing targeting kids.
It's all over kids' TV shows. It's all over. They're targeting the kids.
Kids can choose to wear whatever they want.
Do you support the sexualization of kids through pride propaganda by corporate?
Is there something that we can help you with?
I'm just asking people questions. What about you, sir? Do you support
I'm not
this?
answering any questions, but if you're here to cause any disturbance in the store,
I'm just asking questions. Do you work for the Target?
Disrupting.
Do you work for Target?
I do actually.
Where's your name tag?
I am the undercover loss prevention.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm just asking questions. So do you support this satanic propaganda?
I'm not answering your questions. What you need to do is you either need to leave the store.
God will judge you guys.
God will judge you guys. Now, Ethan Schmidt, unfortunately, has kind of made a hobby out of going into various businesses throughout Arizona to harass employers and employees over mask mandates. In fact, there was an example of him going into a wig shop that serves people who are undergoing chemotherapy. And so they want people to wear masks because those going through chemotherapy treatments have a compromised immune system. But it didn't matter, he went in there and harassed them over that. And I'll give you more details in that story in just a minute. But Cenk, I don't know, I mean, pride paraphernalia, I mean, doesn't that sexualize children?
Okay, so a couple of obvious things that because our media is broken, people don't point out. One is, no, things are not 50-50. A big percentage of the right wing hates gay people. I mean, they think being gay is the equivalent of being satanic. Now, is that all Republicans? No. Is it a giant percentage of Republicans? Yes. Yes, they're constantly talking about, gay people are the problem, and trans people, oh my God, what if they go to a bathroom? They shouldn't be allowed to go to bathrooms, right? No, so they don't pretend you don't hate gay people when you do. And if you're gay and you're voting for Republicans, don't pretend that you're not voting for evil people who hate you. You are. You say, hey, my taxes are more important to me. My greed is more important. That's fine, okay? Just own it, own it. Oh, he doesn't represent all Republicans, really? Not all, just as I said, but there's a majority of, a majority of Republicans make similar points about how trans people, gay people should not have the same rights. They shouldn't be able to adopt. That's a giant Republican talking point. It's the whole party. The question is, are they more subtle about it, or do they just go for satanic talking points like this guy, right? And look, the second part of it is, for those of us who are not fundamentalists, this stuff is so crazy, we don't know how to respond to it, right?
Yeah.
Like my invisible friend told me to hate gay people, and I believed it, so I go around just trying to inspire hate against gay people all throughout my life.
It goes, look, yes, I think what you're saying is valid, right? I'm not trying to minimize it, but I think in this particular case with Ethan Schmidt, he made a name for himself by going into businesses and harassing people over mask mandates. If you notice in this video, no one's wearing masks, right? This is in Arizona, they don't have a mask mandate anymore. So this Target obviously has people walking around without a mask. So what is Schmidt going to now shift his focus onto to continue putting out his stuff, right? His videos and all. He's, now he's gonna focus on stuff that's being sold at a business that he doesn't like. And I just want everyone to understand something. I think this is more of a clout thing for this guy. And I wish that he would understand that he is harassing workers in the middle of a labor shortage, in the middle of a political climate where they're already dealing with all sorts of abuse. They're overworked, in many cases they're forced to engage in mandatory unpaid overtime. And when I say unpaid, they're not getting overtime pay for the extra hours that they're forced to put in. Like, just leave people alone, let them do their jobs. And I get it, you're desperate for attention, congratulations, you're getting it right now. But the other thing I just wanted to note is, the thing I'm getting really tired of is the right wing becoming the arbiters of how we all live our lives. I'm sick of it. You don't like the gay pride shirt? Then don't buy the gay pride shirt. Move it along, Eric.
Capitalism.
Or Ethan, move it along, okay? Don't look at it, don't buy it, but you don't get to dictate what I get to buy or what I like. We're supposed to have freedom in this country, but they get to decide what kind of history we teach our students in public schools. They get to decide, the political makeup of school boards. They get to decide what gets sold at a Target. They get to, no, you don't get to decide. This is a country with people with all sorts of different backgrounds, beliefs. Don't go into a freaking wig store that serves cancer patients and yell at the owners of that wig store because they're implementing a mask mandate. Like, how selfish, self-absorbed, and narcissistic can you possibly be?
Yeah, and it's the same entitlement complex that all the right wing has. I don't like gay people, so I demand that everyone else not like gay people. What a weird demand.
No,
right?
Sorry, bro. It's called sad day for you, as Cenk would say.
Yeah, and it's also called freedom. So that's the second point, which is that guys like him are the most un-American people in the whole country. They say we do not want equality. We don't want it. We want gay people to be treated differently than straight people. We don't want them to have the same rights. We want Americans separated into two different camps, one to have more rights than the other. Well, then you're against the whole idea of America. You never read the Constitution, you never read the Declaration of Independence. You're an un-American traitor to this country. So that's also a fact. And then finally, cancel culture is terrible. This shirt needs to be canceled. Somebody cancel this shirt. I want the shirt canceled. The right wing never makes any sense.
Dude, I get it, you're trying to build a name. Go build something substantive, all right? And do the work. These petty little pathetic like
stunts, publicity
it's just
stunts.
And it's like it's annoying because there's a bunch of copycats who do the same thing. It's like they got their phone ready and they're looking for the next thing to be aggrieved about. For all the heat that the left gets for engaging in outrage culture, can we just take a step back and look at all the outrage that the right wing engages in?
That's all they ever do. Oh my God, some girl went on a track team in the middle of Missouri. Outrage, outrage. Oh, they're teaching that slavery was racist now. Outrage. Okay, they're a bunch of little babies crying and go, why aren't I superior to you? Well, dude, you only got yourself to blame for that. And this guy also chased Rashad, right? He's like, oh, and he's using the N-word. Get out of here, man. Total and utter loser.
I don't like reptiles. I think it's weird that people like to have reptiles as pets. So I'm gonna go into pet stores and I'm gonna harass them for selling reptiles. That's what I'm gonna do. How dare they? I don't like reptiles. So no one should be allowed to buy a reptile as a pet. That's it, period. End of story. This is America. So I get to dictate what kind of pet you have. I only like dogs as pets. So therefore, you can only have a dog as a pet. That's it. America.
If the left acted like the right acts. Like, I love that example. I'll give you another one. I don't like Chips Ahoy. I like other kinds of cookies. I don't like Chips Ahoy. Imagine if I go into like Target and say, why are you selling these Chips Ahoy? Well, just smash the Chips Ahoy against your head. I don't want anybody buying this Chips Ahoy. I'm entitled to make all the rules around here.
These satanic chocolate chip cookies, they say that they're soft and chewy, but are they really?
And is chewy even good in the context of chocolate chip cookies? Okay, and then, guys, last thing on this is they say, they're constantly offended, right? Like Chuck Schumer made the mildest speech and they're like, the Republican senators are so deeply wounded, right? And we're offended at this, we're offended at that, and family values, morality, all this stuff. And then they say, oh, if you're gay, we think you're with Satan. We think you're so evil that you're going to burn in hell, and that like you should be treated as subhuman, but don't hurt our feelings.
I just, by the way, love the employee there who's like, I don't believe in religion. Sorry. Like, are you in favor of pride and Satan? Yeah, sure. Both. I'll take it. By the way, I can't help it. We have a little bit of time left, so why don't we go to one more video of this? Because he just wouldn't let it go and just continued his nonsense. So let's watch.
Hey, ma'am, do you support this?
What did I just say?
You support pride propaganda? Whoa, I'm buying this.
I need you to.
Whoa, let go,
said you're
man.
Not buying it.
I'm gonna buy it and burn it.
Okay, that's your choice. You can totally do that.
But what I said is you need to leave. You can't ask anybody any more questions. You can't disrupt
Freedom of
any more
speech.
people.
Call it, please.
Do you want me to call?
Yeah, call him.
Okay.
Trespass me. I don't care, dude.
Okay.
Clearly.
You think I care if you trespass? I've done this 1,000 times.
And then later he got shut down by other customers and embarrassed himself further. It's just, listen, Schmidt, get it together. Get it together, boy.
Oh yeah, man, I hate cancel culture. I'm gonna buy this shirt and burn it.
And by the way, awesome, great.
They're like, oh, good, at least you're buying it. What do we care what you do with it at home? It's totally irrelevant to us. He's like, I'm gonna call the police. Yeah, I don't care about the police. By the way, Blue Lives Matter. What?
By the way, I don't know about any of his other political views. So we're just kind of like stretching a little here, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, he's a right winger. Are you kidding me? If you tell him cops should become like, Blue Lives Matter, I hate black people. Right, and they're like, oh, we're calling the cops on you. I hate cops, they don't want to arrest white people. Anyway, it doesn't matter, you saw the videos. You can just judge them on the videos. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but a giant percentage of the Republican Party agrees with them. That's a fact.
Yep, they do love harassing workers, that's true.
Yeah, all right, for the members, Power Hour with Nina Turner, Villain of the Week, Hero of the Week. What would Nina do? You guys are gonna love it. TYT.com/join. We'll see you there in a minute.